This is episode number 189. Today, we're featuring artist Chong Huang.
This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called Plein Air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it Plein Air. Others say Plein Air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhoads.
Thank you, Jim Kipping, and thank you to our sponsor today, PaintTube.tv, or PaintTube, which you can find on Amazon, on, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. You got all of our painting videos are up there. That's at PaintTube.tv, or just find PaintTube in the apps section of those places that I just talked about. I want to thank you guys for tuning in every week. It's really fun doing this. I hope you managed to get a lot of painting in this summer and fall. I just kind of feel like it's coming to an end, right? The weather's changing, and we've had some snow in some places. I just wish it would last forever to be so nice. But I've really had a lot of painting this summer and this fall, and I'm doing a lot more. Getting ready now, getting in practice, doing some fall colors so I can go to the artist retreat I'm doing in New Hampshire in the White Mountains. It's where the Hudson River School painters painted, and it's called Fall Color Week. It's my retreat, and it's the only live event I've done all year, and you can learn more about it at fallcolorweek.com. This week, Friday night, we're going to be doing the Plein Air Salon Awards ceremony at 8 p.m. We're going to do it live on Facebook. We're going to live on a number of platforms, but we're giving away some big money, and you want to make sure to tune in. You can get a special link for it at pleinairsalon.com so that you can be reminded. Also, you have till the end of this month to enter your paintings for this month's competition. They won't be awarded in that one. That's the competition that we would have awarded at the Plein Air convention in August. We decided it was important to give away that money. So check it out at pleinairsalon.com. Also coming up in October, Realism Live is going to be taking place. Realism Live is our online virtual event covering all the different things that you want to learn how to paint, like plein air, landscape, portrait, figure, floral, still life, and much, much more. Taught by the very, very best artists on earth. And you can save $200 if you sign up before the end of the month, September 30th. And you sign up at realismlive.com. Now, we also have an artist and selfie competition. And the idea behind this is during COVID, I started asking people to do on my noon broadcast every day. If you've not seen that, I'm noon live on Facebook every day. And I'm on Instagram, Twitter, on YouTube. Just search Streamline Art Video. You'll find us. Best way is to go to Facebook or YouTube and search Streamline Art Video. I'm live every day. Anyway, I'm interviewing artists. I'm doing marketing stuff. I'm doing a lot of different things. But I talked about doing self-portraits. I got everybody interested in doing self-portraits because I think they're so important. There was a time in history when, of course, there was no photography, and artists would do portraits of themselves, other artists, their studios, artists painting outdoors and things. We decided we needed some of that history around. We needed artists to be focusing on doing more self-portraits and portraits of others and so on who are artists. And so we want to create this history by encouraging this. And so we have the artist and selfie competition. And so you got to get into that before October 10th. Get your artist and selfie, any of the paintings. There's 4 categories: self-portraits, portraits of paintings or portraits of other artists. Also, there are plein air painters, outdoors painting, and paintings of studios. And so enter. We've got a bunch of prizes, and we're going to give them away at the end of Realism Live. We'll have an actual link so you can watch live if you are not part of Realism Live. But why would you want to miss that? I mean, that's going to be pretty cool. This week in our weekly newsletter, Plein Air Today, we're going to be having a preview of the content in the October issue of Plein Air Magazine. You want to October, November issue. You want to make sure that you get that. And coming up after the interview, I'm going to be answering some art marketing questions in the Marketing Minute. But first, let's get right to our interview with Chong Huang, an amazing painter that you need to get to know and a very good friend of mine. Chong Huang, welcome to the Plein Air Podcast.
Well, thank you, Eric. Good to talk with you.
You know, I can't believe all this time has passed and we haven't had you on the podcast yet. I apologize. We should have done this much sooner, but I'm glad we're at least getting around to it now.
Yeah, I'm very happy. You know, I think all of us are very busy, and so this is a great opportunity. And so, you know, maybe, you know, whatever we can talk about, you know, I like to share some of the painting tips specifically about plein air. So, you know, okay, whatever, you know, you can start it.
Okay, well, you and I first met. I think we first met at I do a Wednesday night painting group called the Bee Cave Painters, and you started coming to that. You were invited by somebody else, I think, and started coming to that. I think that's the first time we ever met, isn't it?
Actually, you know, I remember we actually that time when you moved from California to Austin, we had a dinner together. I remember this kind of interesting joke, and because I remember received an email some way, and so we start to get acquaintance on the internet. We haven't really met in person yet. So I said, well, maybe we can do painting together, or maybe we can have a dinner together first. So I remember I invite you for dinner. I said, well, you know, this person is coming from California, so I'm in Texas. So what is the best part of the Texas? Of course, it's the Texas barbecue. So remember that?
Yeah, I do know.
I remember set up an appointment in County Line Restaurant, which is the best barbecue in Austin. And then I met you in the restaurant, but then I find out you are a vegetarian.
A vegan.
A vegan vegetarian. Then you only can maybe have some potato salad, you know. So I remember that was my.
I had forgotten all about that. Forgive me for not remembering that. That's right. And then I probably invited you to my paint group.
Yeah, so then I think that during the dinner time, you talk about your plan. I talk about my experience. So then we said, well, let's get something together. So you have this painter group in Bee Cave, which is closer to your home. And okay, so I said, well, yes, I would love to. So since then, so I've been come to your Wednesday evening paint out or model painting for quite a while.
Well, we haven't done it this year, have we?
No. Yeah, this year is difficult. You know, I think everybody experienced something totally different from normal, and we try to adapt.
Yeah. So you have been you've been doing about, I think, 30 or 40 workshops a year. And all of a sudden, not that. How many a year?
Yeah, I think it's about 2 per month. So it's about 20 or a little bit more than 20. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, but this year is totally different.
Yeah. So how have you responded this year since you couldn't do those workshops? You've been doing some online teaching. What have you been doing?
I did some online teaching. Of course, there's a big, long learning curve to cross. Then I haven't really get my technical skills up to this scale yet. So I'm learning, and this year's my last workshop was in California. That was in March. So after that, I haven't really left my studio yet. So basically, how to cope with whatever business-wise, artistic-wise, and I'll try to learn. I think that before I started on my online teaching or videos, and I kind of spent quite a time to pondering it's not always negative, to be able to have this time to be sort of isolated. So I can really meditate and think about it. So so before I come back to business immediately, I did something which is actually learning, because I consider I try to review my artistic career, and I was trained as a scientist before, and all my previous career was in engineering and physics. So I kind of coming to the art field in an unconventional way. I didn't really have much of a professional training, and then get into the art world, then start to do some painting, start to take some workshop, but very, very quick, I found myself to become a teacher. Haven't really got enough time to be a student. Then suddenly I need to teach. So that's been, I just kind of go with the flow for so many years. So now the time I start to review myself, I said maybe this is a good time. I need to revisit some part of the knowledge or some skills we haven't, I haven't really spent enough time on the training. So maybe that's a good time. So I will learn a little bit more before I jump into, teaching again. So I spent about, I think, from March to June, pretty much 3 months, just try to learn. I reading books and checking other people's work and do some testing painting, and then so that's what I did. So after the pandemic started.
Well, and you also developed an app, which we're going to talk about a little later in the program, which is phenomenal.
Right.
You went on my Noon Daily and demonstrated that app, which is pretty cool.
Yes, that app is actually a kind of application from what I have learned, because I decided, which part I really want to relearn or maybe research. So what's the knowledge about color? So that gave me the motivation to kind of go back in both artistic history and also the science. So I spent a long time on the internet. So try to go through what the in the history, what Isaac Newton did, and what is the Maxwell did, then what is Albert Mansell did. Then ended up, come to the computer science and then doing research about how this sRGB system for computer color system developed. Then what is the difference between the color theory of our artists use? Basically, it's a Mansell color theory, and the difference between the Mansell theory and also now the current computer graphics using the computers doing that. Then I found out something quite interesting. I'm kind of in a no man's zone, like a scientific world, the computer science doing something independently from artists, and then artists follow the tradition doing their work, and hardly enough communication between the two fields. So so I decided to kind of like a liaison, go between, then review what is the difference. And so that's why I start to design some of the programs, some of the before I do the apps, I just talking with some scientists and also search online to understand more. This is actually open a new field, and I feel this is quite important. But maybe somebody did, but I maybe I don't know. But I personally definitely want to get a little deeper I try to utilize what my training before, like heavy in mathematics, then go into color theory and into color space, and I try to understand what the scientists already did, and what is knowledge the artists have, and so how to link them together. So that's my motivation to start with, and then ended up after I got some conclusions, get some of the mathematical work finished, then I found out, maybe this is a good idea to generate some new algorithms, and then maybe you can write programs. So, and then the artists, even lots of, I believe, most of artists want to learn skills, how to paint, how to design, but they may not really interested mathematics and the models, the theories, but there gotta be somebody doing the job. But instead of just tell everybody, oh, this is the mathematics you derive this way, from blah, 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 then that may not work because the communication could be difficult. So, but I said, well, maybe I can have this algorithm and develop some programs, and then ended up with tools online or as an app. Then artists do not really need to understand how this tool developed, but they be able to use it and also be able to help them to learn, to really progress a little faster. So that's how this art, the application all started this way.
Oh, well, fascinating. Well, while we're talking about it, why don't you go ahead and describe briefly what the app does, and then I would recommend to people go to YouTube, search Streamline Art Video, and search your name.
172. Yeah, or 172.
172, and search your name, and then go and watch that, because you did a painting using your app and showing how that works, and that way they can see it visually. But just briefly, tell us what the app does.
Okay, basically it's talking about color. The app is majorly used to help artists to visualize color more accurately. We see color. We're bombarded with color all the time, and it doesn't really matter. You paint plein air. You go outside. All the nature beauties, all the colors just come to your retina. Or if you paint from photo, or like a lot of beginners do that, so you have a photo and a whole bunch of information on the photo, specifically talking about color. So the color within content, like for instance, a tree on the background of a mountain, then there's a blue sky, or all of this color actually related. So the colors are not standing by themselves. You say, okay, this is red, this is green. But actually, we visualize, we perceive color from the comparison from one specific color relative to the environment this color is in. Okay, so in this situation, your color vision really get influenced by the surrounding colors. Probably everybody had this experience. You see some optical illusions. You see something. Okay, if for instance, like a red color around a green background, so that red will be very vibrant. Okay, but if the red color around by the orange background, then the red may not be that vibrant. So all of this visual phenomena of a color perception changes. So that's the reason, when we standing in front of the natural scene or in front of the photograph, you try to judge that color. Usually you're wrong, or I will be wrong, because the surrounding color has so strong influence on our visualization. So, but on the other hand, every color is absolute. A color, you can measure the color by its hue, chroma, and value. That's where artists are doing that. And of course, the scientists are doing that. It is how much red, how much green, how much blue. Okay, so they do specifically, very absolute color can be established. So, so the app, I call that Painter's Guide. Okay, so that helps. We change the color from the reference, this photo or another image, from the relative environment into an absolute environment. So basically, I use this like a color picker. So you pick this specific color and replot this color into a separate swatch of a color surrounded by white. Okay, so in this kind of environment, you get rid of the background. So you know exactly what color absolutely look like. So lots of people very surprised, say, okay, after I pick this color and showing on the color swatch, wow, it is totally different, either too dark or too light or too dull. Sometimes we see vibrant color in the photo, but actually it's not that vibrant, so that's the reason I'm doing that. So, and also I put this color against a gray, a piece of gray swatch, which is only indicate the value of that piece of color. So that way you can really see the color correctly. So after that, and also I enlarge the piece of color. On the photograph, maybe this color is a very small piece, but then if the color area too small, you cannot really identify that color accurately. So after you enlarge the color, then the color sense will be stronger and will be more sensitive about color. The area of the color swatch is very important. Sometimes, when we do small paintings, sometimes the color may not be right, but you can get over it. It's okay. But when you're doing a large painting, when you have a large piece of color, little bit off of that color will be significantly different, when people seeing that. Even for non-artists, they have this experience. They might be painting their wall in a living room. So when they have a color sample, they go to the paint store to try to mix, a large can of paint, then coming back and then paint the wall. But then you find out, okay, with a little bit of color difference, it will be significant difference after you paint large area. So that's the part of the app is really blow up the area of the color. So then you can visualize the color much more easily. And also you can color match. After you have this app, you put on your computer, then you mix a mixture on the palette. So you can hold your palette knife or brush in front of the computer screen, then compare what is the color on your brush and the color on the swatch. Sometimes we don't really see color individually correctly, but by comparison, it'll be much, much easier to figure out exactly what that color is. That maybe your mixture is a little bit too light, and it will be maybe a little bit too dull, or maybe too warm and too cool. So all of this, so for beginner artists, even more important, because we're not as really experienced about color temperature, color harmony, color design, all of these advanced terms. However, if you mix the color, then you'll be able to bring closer to your reference with this app. You can compare, so then you'll know whether or not you mix that piece of color correctly. So I feel that it is significant even for advanced painters. For instance, portrait painter. You paint somebody's face, and the light on the face, the skin tone can be very, very subtle, and also there's a very subtle changes on the color temperature or the skin tone. So how do I identify that? So this tool can help even advanced painters. So that was the motivation. It was in my mind for quite a long time. Then I did develop the algorithm, but I didn't know how to code. So that's the I started working a little bit with my network, and then I find out two good friends, and also they're computer scientists. So Guoliang Gu and Ben Min Fu, and husband and wife team. So we started to communicate about these ideas. So they did a code, they write the code, and then I just tried it out, and then communicate with them, and gradually develop this app.
Well, I think people, it's hard to imagine without seeing it, but if people, they can go to your website to get it, and your website is what?
My website is www.qh-art.com.
Okay, and then they can.
.com. Yeah, so after get to the website, they can click on the apps tab.
Yeah.
It's on the home page. Then there's a whole bunch of apps. Then you go to the very last one called Painter's Guide. Click on that. Yeah, then there's a short instruction about how to use it.
Okay.
Then you can just directly try it out.
Yeah, it's a great tool. It's a really great tool if you're painting from photographs. Even though this is a Plein Air podcast, a lot of us do that from time to time. Chong, I want to move on to some other things because we want to make sure that we cover them. So tell me where you're from originally, and is that where you started learning art?
I was born in Beijing, China. Then I moved to immigrant to U.S. in 1985, and so when I was in China, I have some very limited art training or art experience. I did have inspiration. When I was very young, I already wanted doodle, and I'm very sensitive visually. So I will give credit to my first teacher, which is really keep me motivated. It was my uncle. So my uncle was a high school art teacher. So actually my first oil painting visual experience is plein air. That time, my uncle lived in a small town in the south part of China, and I was in Beijing. And in the summertime, my uncle during the summer break time, and school had no school, and he usually come to Beijing because my grandma lived with us at that time, and so my uncle was a plein air painter, and so every time he always have his portable easel with a little box, a very, very crude, just a box of paint, and there's a wood palette inside, and then he will using the push pin to hold a piece of panel on the cover of the paint box and do painting. So that time he really gave me the inspiration. And because he came to Beijing and he doesn't know where to go. And so I said, well, I will show you beautiful places. I know many beautiful places. So we've been traveling together. So I watched him, painting. So that gave me the first inspiration about oil painting. And also he gave me a set of oils from his box. So I'm still have some of the colors, so I memorize what he did for me. So that's basically what I got in China. I didn't really paint much, I might be trying one or two. So, and then most of my art experience or knowledge, skills, I learned from taking workshops. So that's after I moved to U.S.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, makes a lot of sense. So when did the plein air painting start for you?
Plein air, of course, besides the plein air experience, what I saw my uncle did that, and it was, I think it was start about 2003 or 2004, around that time, because I joined the local group called the Plein Air Austin. So I go to do some of the plein air work, just for fun, for exercise, and to get socialized with local artists. So I remember my first really organized plein air event was in Fort Worth, Texas. They have there's an organization in Texas called Outdoor Painters Society, right? OPS.
Yeah.
So I joined OPS and did some paint out together. I remember we did in Botanical Garden in Fort Worth, the Rose Garden and Japanese Garden there. So I think that's 2003. And I really had some good experience. Even my art wasn't really that developed, but the activity was really inspirational. So I really learned a lot, and then and acquaintance with many very wonderful artists, art friends there. So that's my. I did that I think for 2 years. One it might be 2003 and 2004. So after that, I did locally, still keeping some time plein air. Then I started joining the national plein air festivals. So my official, the very first one, was 4 years ago in Easton, Maryland.
Well, you had nothing like starting with the best.
I didn't really know what's going on, so I joined. I submitted some paintings, and I applied. I got admission. So then I joined them. Then that was my first official plein air. So after that, I've been back to Easton 2 more times, and then also joined the Plein Air Texas, some other like a plein air event in Sedona or the Wayne County, Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania. And so it's really, really enjoyable. So I start to every year plan some time to participate this kind of competitions. So that's pretty much my plein air experience.
You're very good, and your your paintings have a very unique style. They're clearly yours. Of all things, the closest thing that I could say that they remind me of is Richard Schmid. And I know you went and studied with Richard, or at least went and met with him for a while. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was. So I really feel grateful, and Richard and Nancy are very nice. You're a very wonderful artist. I've been admire Richard's work for a long time, but haven't really get a chance to get close to him. And also, I was that time. I was pretty shy. I don't really know how come my level artists can get close to meet him, and even I really do not know how to do this. And so that was like probably about 10 years ago, around 2010, 2011, that time. And happened to be, I was teaching in New England area. I had a workshop scheduled. So then I was in that area. And also my family and I lived in New Hampshire for a while. Actually, my son was born in Qiang, New Hampshire. So we decided that summers after my workshop, we'll go back to Qiang, New Hampshire, just kind of like, to visit some old friends there and to see the town, kind of, nostalgic. So then I just look at the map. I said, well, Qiang, New Hampshire, Well, that's only 15 minutes away from the border of New Hampshire and Vermont, and Putney is right there. I know about Putney painters. I heard about their names and I know quite a few artists from that area. I know Richard Schmid organized this it's called a Putney Painters.
Yep.
So I said, wow, I'm already 15 minutes away from, so I will give it a try to see if it's possible I'd be able to meet Richard. And so they give me the courage to send an email to Putney Painters. So I didn't know anybody. But then I get a response from the organizer, and so they said, well, you're welcome to visit here, and so maybe we can, you can see, they're very, very down to earth and very, very kind and nice. So I accepted their invitation. So that happened to be, when the day I visit the Putney Painters and Richard Schmid and a whole bunch of artists. They want to do a portrait session, and my wife posed as the model for the session, and so I watched Richard and Nancy, doing the portrait. So I was really, really fortunate, look at Richard Schmid and working and spend the whole day. And he's very kind. He's very famous and very good, but he's very humble and very down to earth.
And
so
very giving. He's a very giving guy.
Yes. So after I knew Richard, so then I started to communicate with the Putney Painters. Became a friend and became a guest, actually. They invite me again. So every time, if I'm in the Vermont vicinity of Putney, I always try my best to go there to get closer to Richard and all the wonderful Putney painters. So then really learned a lot, by watching the master doing the wonderful work. Is very enjoyable and is very informative as well.
Well, what a gift! And what is there something you could articulate that from that meeting of Richard that changed your work forever?
Yes, actually, when I watch Richard's working, before I met him, before I saw he's doing the painting live, his paintings are very fluent. It's like, okay, it looks like he's doing pretty quickly, pretty easily, and it's just musical, and all the movement is very, everything kind of just like very spontaneous.
They look like they were done in 10 minutes.
It looks like they're done in 10 minutes. So, and of course, I try to mimic that. I learned, by reference to Richard's painting, try to kind of get in the similar kind of style. And I found it's not that easy. So then it gave me more motivation and curiosity, want to, check his method. So I got all his DVDs and his books. So then finally I got a chance to see him painting, together with other painters. I'd be able to watch the progress that he's painting. Actually, he's very, very conscientious, very, very careful. Then he will mix the color, on the palette, very, very detailed. Try to got everything right before he put that piece of color on canvas. So after he decided everything, figured out everything, already troubleshooted, so everything's right. So he just boldly, spontaneously put that stroke on the canvas. Boom, everything happens. So that's gave me some experience, some teaching as well. So because when I was a beginner painter, I kind of like to experiment on the canvas. If the color is not right, I'm just going to mix another color. I try to correct mistakes, and of course the mistake cannot be completely corrected. Always a residue left there. So I learned that from Richard that if try not to make mistakes. Of course, we all make mistakes, but we need to learn from mistakes. And also we need to really prepare, really strategize, try to plan everything for that kind of effect. Then after you create that effect, you want that effect loud and clear. So that's what I really learned from Richard Schmid's working.
Well, you do all these workshops, and you have high demand. You have waiting lists of people wanting to come to your workshops. So, talk to me about the things that you teach that might be a little bit different in terms of your approach to painting, and maybe give some ideas or tips that would be helpful to us today.
Right. So the teaching is I have been teaching since 2008. So I learned from my teaching experience. To be a teacher and to be an artist, actually two totally different things. So when I teach, I feel I really want to organize the information I want to pass on to my student. So I do some homework before I go to the classroom. So I try to use all kinds of tools. At the very beginning, I give a lecture. I put a PowerPoint presentation, and also the demonstration. I organize my information, so I introduce the approaches step by step. So and also which one go first, which one go second. I'm pretty rigorous and pretty organized. So usually the first day of the workshop, I'm very rigid. I give a very systematic approach, and everything is very clear and no ambiguity there. So then the students can grab the information, correctly. Sometimes I feel, at the very beginning when I teach, if I'm not sure, I'm just kind of try to figure it out spontaneously in front of everybody, and they may work. Maybe the painting can turn out okay, but the teaching effect may be compromised. So that's why, and also it's based on my learning experience. When I take workshops, take other people's workshop, I have some frustration. Some of wonderful teachers, and maybe some people are very wonderful artists, but since the class is not very organized, the information doesn't reach to the student. So I just feel, that to be a teacher, we need to do additional work. It's not only to be able to show, be able to demo on the canvas, but also be able to pass the information to the student. So that's the homework every art teacher need to do. So before we go to the class, because lots of artists say, well, I'm so intuitive, I'm just go with the flow, okay? Because sometimes that could be, you can be very entertaining, okay? It can be very, to really create inspiration to your students. However, is that your information really can grab by your students? That would be totally different question.
Inspiration doesn't always stick.
Right. So because lots of, every art is, it's very subjective. You cannot really like mathematical equations. Okay, so there's no one correct way to do things. There's so many ways, but when you're pursuing one specific approach, so you want to explain, which at least I myself try to do that in front of my students. Try to tell them, okay, I do this. Why I'm doing this? and try to avoid some obvious mistakes. So all of this. So that's the reason I consider it is it is fundamental for a teacher. You really need to put yourself into your students' shoes. Some students may be very beginning level, some may be in the intermediate, some may be advanced. So then you really try to understand their level. You can approach to the painting from their level and then teach accordingly. So that's at least, that's the requirement for, I set it up for myself, So every time when I teach a workshop, I don't really go there just spontaneously, intuitively do things, Of course, entertainment is very important. Some students might be just looking for entertainment, but lots of students really want to grab your technique and also showing progress on their painting. So that's my experience of painting. Also, I do have some advice for students as well. Okay, so I know many students take many workshops. Okay, so make sure you have time to digest the information you learned from specific workshops, then turn their teaching into your own skills before jump into another workshop, because teachers are different. There's just like what I said a moment ago, it's like the approach to painting, there's so many ways. So the teachers can be contradictory, to each other. But as a student, you really want to find the approach consistent, suitable for you. So I just do not really passively led by the teacher, So that's my thinking too for students, learning actively instead of passively.
Okay. All right. Terrific. So now let's talk about, we've got a lot of painters who are listening. Let's talk about some specifics that maybe a couple of ideas, maybe a couple ideas for beginners, a couple ideas for others.
Yeah. Okay. I feel, painting is a really complicated thing. So for beginners, I feel the first thing, before you jump into full-blown oil painting, spend some time drawing. And I started painting when I was, I think around 2000, and I was 40-some years old at that time. So I kind of like a late starter. However, before I, put a brush, into paint, I did many years of drawing. That time I even didn't, bother about color, just black and white, charcoal drawing or pencil drawing. Really spend the time on the fundamentals, because the foundation is the most important. And also drawing, sometimes some people do not have a clear idea what to draw. And I think, first thing, lots of people talk about drawing. Okay, I go to life drawing, or figure drawing, and the gesture will go to do that. I will not do that, because I usually think figure portrait, that's the most difficult subject matter to do. So I will set up some still lifes, something simple, might be a ball or something, even the color-wise, try to be consistent, like the old school art teaching, they put like a plaster, which is to get rid of the color information. Just try to understand the value. Start from there. So because lots of people go to life drawings and just go to the figure sessions, they can be no progress for their whole life. I do see many people in life drawing sessions doing that. So I do recommend that if you really want to be good in your art, establish a solid drawing foundation. Try to learn how to measure, how to get in the proportion correctly, and how to get the perspective correctly. Even just black and white. Okay, then for the intermediate or the advanced painters, I don't really have a lot of advice but I really enjoy looking at other people's work, like Richard Schmid. When I look at Richard Schmid's work, and other masters' work, I try to do some analysis. Even the color app, for instance, the color app. There's another application of the color app. So what I'm doing, maybe I can do another one for advanced artists. You can analyze the style of a master's painting, for instance, John Singer Sargent. So you go there, start to using the color picker to pick up some samples, and then you can statistically know what is his favorite color and what is this on one specific painting. Most of the color happen to which part of the color wheel. So then you understand the color scheme or color design this specific master artist do. Then if you want to mimic the style, or you want to maybe putting some of his style into your style, then you'll be able to do it. So instead of just blindly admire somebody, beautiful work by Renaissance work or Russian masters, but then you'll be able to understand specifically why his work have some sort of special effect.
One thing I was curious. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think that's basically my ideas for beginners and advanced artists.
One thing I noticed when you were painting one time, and I'm just curious if this is something you're doing or still doing, but and this was in a portrait session, but you kind of you oiled down your canvas before you started painting, and you got this very fluid look by doing so. Are you still doing that?
I still do. It's like I do a wash, which is Richard Schmid does that too. Before I have any kind of detailed, realistic presentation on the canvas, I first thing try to bring the value into the middle. So that's the reason we tone our canvas. You can tone your canvas in advance and waiting for it to dry. Then you'll start to paint on top of that. Or you can alla prima, doing this alla prima work, which is in one session. So you'll tone your canvas at the beginning of the painting session. That's the oil wash I did in that portrait session. So first thing, I want to destroy the completely perfect whiteness. So I put some neutral tone on the canvas and also establish a temperature tendency.
Say that again. Establish a temperature.
Yeah, temperature tendency, or orientation of the either you want the painting to be a warm painting or a cool painting.
Right. So is it warm dominant or cool dominant? Yeah.
Yeah. So then, if you already made up your mind, what kind of a temperature you want the painting to be. So this wash stage you do is basically already push you into the harmony of that temperature direction.
Are you doing a wash with a Gamsol or turpentine, or it seems to me I remember you kind of laying down some oil.
Yeah, well, I do. Oh, that's actually I have two things. Usually I use linseed oil and mineral spirit. This is two medium I use. So and sometimes that depends. I don't do that always. It is like depends on the texture of the canvas or the panel. Some of the panels or canvas is super absorptive. So that on that kind of a surface, you have to use significantly more paint to start with. Otherwise, the paint, your brush strokes will turn to be dry marks. Lots of dry brush strokes. So the dry strokes are difficult to define the shape, because there's too much texture on it. So I do that, before I tone the canvas. So sometimes I just use a little bit of oil, like linseed oil, and use a piece of paper towel, do a little bit, kind of rubbing, slightly amount of linseed oil on the surface. So this way the canvas is absorbing some of the linseed oil into the canvas. So on top of that, you can put the paint on top. So the paint will move much smoother, actually much more economical and efficient. So that's the technique, sometimes I do. But sometimes I like the dry marks, so that if I really like the dry marks, then I probably tend not to do that. So it's an optional process.
No, well, I found it to be fascinating because I think a lot of us tend to put a wash with a terps on, an underpainting, if you will, in terps. But to see you do it with kind of a linseed oil, oiling down the canvas, not too oily, but it left beautiful marks. It was really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, because terps dry faster than oil. And also the oil you use a so small amount. And also the oil is consistent with your paint, tube paint, because there's either oil linseed based or walnut based or oil based. So means they mix with your color consistently.
Right.
So, but just don't overdo it, because like during the workshops, I tell people this trick, but I do see people at the beginning, they don't know how much they put it on. So if they put too much of this, that will causing the painting surface too slick. Yeah. Then the paint will not adhere to the canvas. So that would be another extreme. So it is like a learning curve. You have to experiment, trial by error, until you know how much on which specific canvas you need to do this. So
yes,
after you do that,
I made that mistake. I tried to copy what you were doing, and mine was an oily mess. It didn't work quite as beautifully as you did it.
But it's a learning experience. And then after you do a few more times, you probably figure out what is the quantity of oil you want.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask you a question. You very graciously agreed to participate in the worldwide event Plein Air Live that we did back in July, and of course I'm doing another which is called Realism Live, which is coming up in October 20th and so on. What were your impressions for the people who are kind of wondering whether or not they should attend something like that? What were your impressions as a participant? That maybe things that occurred that you didn't expect, or things that were not as good as you thought they would be, or were better? Do you have any impressions for everybody?
I feel pretty good. When I was with Plein Air Live, I watched the, partially I watched the video, and partially I was watching live. And I feel that organized very well, because this is really the good experience for learning, and also, both the skills and the knowledge. There's some artists I'm not very familiar with, but this event, be able to have this artist introduce their styles, or doing a demo, or doing a talk. So I start to realize, this artist might be, I don't know them, but maybe that's a really, really good opportunity. I can check them online, so I will learn something new. And I feel very positive about this event, and also this is really an overview of a whole spectrum of different styles. Well, a moment ago I'm talking about drawing. I think if for the forthcoming realism life, this event will be very beneficial for some serious painters. For somebody really want to be good. So now this will be really the event. I think if they be able to participate, that would be great. So I think Eric, you're doing a wonderful job to organize, to get so many expertise together in a very condensed way, so people can really benefit from it.
Well, it's very kind of you. Thank you. What I like about it is the idea. It's been kind of a dream to put together something that encompasses not only landscape, not only plein air, but also, still life and figure and portrait and flower painting. All of us tend to do a lot of different things. Not, some of us are only landscape painters, but you, for instance, are a fabulous portrait painter, and you also do scenes that involve figures and landscape. You also do still life, and so to be able to see all these different things together, I think, is a pretty cool thing.
Right. I think so. So even you cross very broadly about different genres, from still life to figure and portrait, and so that's actually when people participate this kind of event. So they will have a directly experience that. So what is the fundamental about painting? It doesn't really matter the genres. When they watch the different artists, some artists working on flowers, someone may be working on the face. So even they're working very differently, but if you're learning, active learning again, so if you really analyze this, you will find out that there's a lot of in common. Doesn't really matter which genre. So if you really want to get the secret of painting, try to figure out what is behind the genre, and then you'll really get the essence of a painting. So after that, it doesn't really matter what you do. See, like I try to, do paintings, not specifically one genre. I started with still life, but then I do figures and also landscape. So this way will really broaden my experience, and also it will be more exciting, more versatile. So this way you can really experience so many different types of subject matter.
That's what I found is that I saw approaches I'd never seen before, and I thought I'd seen everything, and I saw things that tips and ideas that just sometimes just picking up one tip can make a huge difference in the way you approach your painting and so on. I got so much out of it. And what's interesting to me is I didn't realize how much I got out of it. I mean, I enjoyed every bit of it, but now when I'm out painting, all of a sudden, I'll be challenged with a particular problem, and all of a sudden it'll pop into my head something that I saw on that broadcast that was like, oh, I got to try that. And so it kind of implants itself, especially when you're watching, 5 days of it. It's pretty incredible. Hey, well, this has been absolutely delightful, and I want to thank you for being on the Plein Air Podcast today.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Well, so I've enjoyed that. I think that my intention, either painting or teaching, is hope more artists get more inspiration, and also participate into representational art and also abstract art. So our world it is in trouble now. I think we should work together, to using the beautiful images and united people, bring love, bring peace, and so have everybody we get together doing positive things. So then I hope the world gets healed and then everything getting better.
Well, that's part of our job, is to bring beauty to the world. So, and you're doing a beautiful job of it. Thank you so much. And And thank you for being such a good friend, but also for being on the Plein Air Podcast today.
All right. Thank you.
Well, that was Chong Huang, and thanks again. What a great guy. He approaches art as science, and he's making great strides as a result, does beautiful work, beautiful paintings, and just an incredible all-around great guy and brilliant, brilliant painter. So are you guys ready for some marketing ideas?
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
Yeah, buy my book. That would be pretty cool. In the Art Marketing Minute, I try to answer your art marketing questions. I always answer them. Whether or not I get them right, I don't know. But anyway, email your questions to me, eric@artmarketing.com. We're always looking for questions. Here's one from Russell Martinez in Boise City, Idaho, who says, what's the best way to approach a former buyer about buying a new painting? Well, first off, Russell, it's a great question, and it's an important question. You see, we are all always focusing on how we get more new business, but the reality is that most businesses make most of their money on repeat business. And so if you can figure out a strategy to get repeat business, that's important. I teach that in a lot of my art marketing boot camp video series, and I also teach it in my book. But the idea is that you want to find ways to engage people to buy more in the future. Now, there's a couple of things. First off, I have two answers. The first is to understand that the very best time to sell someone a second painting is when they're buying the first one. Think of McDonald's, and they always say, well, do you want fries with that? They suggest something. The theory is that people buy more during the peak of enthusiasm if they are already on a dopamine high, because dopamine is triggered when you're buying things, all kinds of research about that. People like to buy more. That's why they put all this stuff at the checkout counter at the grocery store, because they're buying stuff that they want to buy more stuff. And it doesn't seem practical, but it works. And so they love you, they love your work, so why not sell them another thing? So here's what you can do. After you get a commitment on the first painting, you can say, hey, by the way, I want to show you a couple other paintings that would go really well with this one, because I kind of intended these to hang together. Now, don't lie to anybody. If it's not true, don't tell them that. But you can say, here's some paintings that I think would go well with that painting in a little grouping, in your living room or something. And then you pull it out, create a little grouping, see how they react. They might want to buy it. They might say, would you give me a discount on those or something? You can decide what to do. I like to also think that a great way to do this is to say, hey, you bought a painting from me. I'm really honored that you would do it. I make my living as an artist, and it's nice to find people like you are willing to buy. I'd love to reward you by giving you a 10% or 20% off on any of the other paintings if you buy them today. And if you buy a whole bunch of them, I might give you a really special discount. This is very effective, and people like to take advantage of that, and it's a good thing to do. The other thing to do is to stay in touch with collectors and buyers over time. When you get a buyer, send them a nice note, send them some note cards with their painting on the note card. Stay in front of them, touch base by email or mail. Don't become a pest, but stay in touch, because, even though I've bought paintings, sometimes I don't remember the names of the artists. That's not so much true anymore, but when I first started doing it, it was true. And, you kind of blend in with everybody else, and they go, what was the name of that person? So you want to stay visible, because they might be going, well, I got to get a gift, or I got a birthday coming up or something. So I created a whole program called Art Marketing in a Box, which was designed to re-engage buyers and also to get local buyers and collectors more engaged, and works really effectively. We had one artist who bought it, and they doubled their sales in the first year using this strategy. Anyway, the idea is to stay visible. We use different pre-written things, and you can, of course, adjust them. But the idea is that you can put things in front of buyers to stimulate purchases at different times a year when they're seeking gifts or when, other things are happening. And it's just nice to stay in front of them. The more you stay in front of them, the more they will eventually buy. It's just proven science. I was talking about science earlier. Don't be afraid to ask, too. If they love your work, they probably would love more. And you say, I'd love to see a couple more paintings go out the door with you today. Is there anything we can do to make that happen? And let them say, yeah, maybe if you did this or maybe if you did that. Don't be afraid to ask. And also, the other thing we all make a mistake of is don't assume that somebody does not have money, because they might have money. They might have a lot of money. You never know what they've got. And so just go ahead, and it never hurts to ask. If you don't ask, you won't get, right? Now, here's a question from Amanda Lewis in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Amanda says, I make an annual donation from my art to a nonprofit. Can or should I use that as a marketing point? And I would say, Amanda, absolutely yes. Here's what I like to do, and I love to donate paintings to auctions and to silent auctions, and I don't care if it's costing me a painting, and sometimes I'll do a really big one. And why? Well, because it's a great marketing opportunity. And don't look at it as how much this is costing you. Say, well, if I give them a $2,000 painting, can I get $2,000 or $4,000 worth of marketing value out of this? Think about this. Most art marketing situations, most art marketing, where am I going with that? Most of these nonprofit situations where they're doing an auction or something, a charity auction, they're tending to attract local people who have money. Not always, but oftentimes. And those people are willing to spend because they want to give money to the organization. And so you can make yourself highlighted. What I oftentimes will say is, look, I would love to give you a $5,000 painting. I'll give you a really big one. But in return for that, here's what I want. I would like to be the featured. I'd like my image of my painting, maybe even my picture with my painting. I would like to have it on the cover of the website, right up front. Win or opportunity to win a $5,000 painting from Eric Rhoads. Now, the other thing you want to be on their postcard. You want to be on their emails. You want to be on everything. And so you're getting that. The second thing I like is I want an introduction at the event before my thing is auctioned off. And that way they stand, here's Eric. And that way, at the cocktail party, I get to meet people and they have something in common. They can talk to me about, oh, I loved your art. And then I can collect business cards. The third thing is I always give them a second painting to give away in the silent auction or for a drawing. And I'll put cards in there. I'll put a thing in there to put your card in to win, and that way I get the names and draw it. Now, another thing I oftentimes will do, this is sometimes effective, sometimes not, is I will actually suggest to them that I'd be willing to do a little bit more for them in exchange for the names. In that, or would they do an email blast on my behalf? Here's a beautiful painting from this artist. He donated it to us, and we want to make you aware of his work and his website, that kind of a thing. So anyway, it's a great question, and it's something you should do and look for an opportunity to use in your marketing. Anyway, that has been the Marketing Minute.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
Well, anyway, a reminder to sign up for Fall Color Week. I'd love for you to join me for my retreat coming up very, very soon in New Hampshire, fallcolorweek.com. Also, check out the Plein Air Salon Awards ceremony on Friday. If you're listening to this on time, it's at 8 p.m. Friday. Look for it on Facebook Live or, go to pleinairsalon.com to sign up to get in. It's free. And there's a $200 savings on the line for Realism Live if you sign up before the end of this month. It's just go to realismlive.com. This is going to be an international event. Artists from all over the world attending. You get to you see some of the top artists in the world who are teaching. We have artists teaching from Italy, from let's see, what am I thinking of? From Italy, from Ireland, from Portugal, probably some other places I can't remember at the time. So you want to go and see this. We're going to be teaching all the different disciplines. Also, if you've not seen my blog, by the way, go to realismlive.com for that. If you've not seen my blog, I have one called Sunday Coffee. I talk about philosophy and a lot of other things. It's got about 250,000 people reading it now, and you would be 250,001, and I'd be honored if you would get it. Just go to coffeewitheric.com, and that is where you can find it for free. This is always fun. I love doing it. We'll do it again sometime, like maybe next week. I hope I'll see you then. My name is Eric Rhoads, and I'm the publisher and the founder of Plein Air Magazine. You can find us online at outdoorpainter.com. Remember, it's a big world out there, and I want you to go paint it. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhoads. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.